Welcome to 123 Minimize with Jody and Linnea, the podcast where we discuss easy minimalism for busy moms. Whether you're a new mom in need of practical decluttering tips or an experienced parent seeking simplified routines, you've come to the right place. I'm Jody, wife and full-time working mom of 4. In 2017, I founded the Minimalist Mom Facebook group, now with over 270,000 members. My passion is creating a simple, healthy, and happy home where my family can thrive.
I'm Linnea, a homeschooling mom of 4. In 2021, my family and I sold our house, downsized to a 36-foot travel trailer RV, and embraced minimalism. Living with less has been liberating, and I'm thrilled to share tips and experiences to help you simplify your life. Whether you're sitting down, getting stuff done, or lacing up your walking shoes, welcome to the 123 Minimize podcast.
In today's episode, we'll be talking about minimalism and preparedness. So stay tuned for some insights and thought-provoking discussion. So today we're going to be talking about preparedness and minimalism. Some people would say that these are conflicting topics, right? Buying extra stuff for potential events happening or not having stuff, right?
Right.
So I've gone through different phases of preparedness and what we kept in the house. I see preparedness as many different types of topics depending on your situation in your own home. So of course there's an emergency supply list at ready.gov, which is suggestions that the government has put forth for us to have. Some people think about preparedness. When they hear the word preparedness, they maybe think about end of the world prepping or major natural disasters. Depending on where you live in the country, some of this is more important potentially than other parts. Where I live, a disaster could be a tornado. With a tornado, your preparedness bin might go up in the wind, potentially. So it's kind of a different scenario. At a different time in my life when we shared a car and we had lots of snow, right? That can be a time when you don't have electricity potentially. And I had little kids. I kept different stuff in the house that was maybe more in relating to not having electricity for a little bit. Or maybe my husband, he worked 12-hour days at that time, and maybe I needed a backup of some things in case he wasn't there and I couldn't go anywhere. Where I lived wasn't necessarily walkable, especially not with a lot of little kids in the winter.
Right.
So I would have extra food just in case, I didn't plan necessarily, like a couple of backup meals that might have been we ran out of stuff and I wasn't aware, sleep deprived. And so it kind of gave me that buffer. So I would keep things in a different area, like in a bin, so I wasn't just using it up. And it was like backup food. Where we lived, it was advised not to necessarily drink tap water. And so backup water, like some extra tissues. I had a sick box, I'd call it, and just some things for like colds, stomach flu, things that kind of popped up and 2 a.m. and we didn't usually use things like paper towels at our house. We used towels, hand towels and washcloths. And so, but stomach flu, I did like a good roll of paper towels. Yeah. So I would have in my mind, you have the topic of preparedness for things like that.
Right.
Little extra, some, tissues with lotion in them maybe for a little kid who has a runny nose.
Right.
Or even some activities I would have in there. I also kept cash. Sometimes I like to keep cash, and it did come in handy once in a while when it's I need to put some money in a card or something. I'm I have some cash,
Right.
In this cashless world, I like to kind of keep it out of rotation, keep it out of my purse.
Yeah. Also, cars, when you're in a place that has very harsh winters, having an emergency kit in your car in case you get stranded in the winter.
Right. Definitely growing up, we lived way out in the middle of nowhere. It was from our house to a gas station. It was 15 minutes of driving. So you did keep a shovel, maybe some cat litter or something to put under your tires if you got stuck in the ditch. At the beginning of cell phones, way back then, I did have a cell phone that I never used, and it was expensive, but it did come in handy. Lots of freezing rain, lots of snow, some food. stuff like that, and people live in way more rural areas than that, when maybe they're an hour or two from a store or whatever. And so on the way back, people do die in the United States during a snowstorm. Once in a while, people do get in the ditch and freeze to death. So it is important to have a blanket. And I know there's a list, out there somewhere about specific to car stuff. Flares, that's another one that comes to mind. Yeah. So while I think it's important to keep it minimal and keep it of stuff you're actually going to use, I do think it is important to have some things around. When we were newly married, we lived in Mobile, Alabama, and we experienced Hurricane Katrina. And that wasn't where the eye of the storm went, and it wasn't necessarily where most of the damage and deaths were, of course. That was New Orleans, and then the eye of the storm, I think, went into Mississippi. But we were on the side of it, and so we did get damage. Our neighbors had their house, trees fell on their house. We had a big tree fall, but it wasn't on our house. It was actually on our neighbor's fence. The big inconvenience, which is nothing compared to the people that lost their lives in that storm, was that we didn't have electricity for a couple of weeks after.
Oh, wow.
And so we were not prepared necessarily, like a young newlywed couple. And we had jobs where we had to work up until the day before. And so we spent that day after our jobs were done preparing for the storm, going to the store and getting plywood to put over the windows, getting water. I think most things by a day before were sold out, though. I think maybe a friend had extra plywood or something. I can't really remember. It was a long time ago now, but there were things that I wish I had had. And one thing about being in the South and not having power for a couple of weeks is that you realize how much air conditioning takes out moisture in your home, because it's very, very humid there.
It's humid.
And everything reeked. Everything was dark. We had a couple of candles maybe, but no really big lights. So you're kind of just wandering around your house in the dark. And we were able to find some food at one point. We had curfews and all that kind of stuff because of power lines down. They did not want people leaving their house. So once, like maybe a week in, the curfews were lifted, and then we could go. There was like a Barnes and Noble that was near a hospital. And of course the hospital is going to have power right away. And so that store didn't. Maybe a restaurant too. But you could sit in the AC a little bit. But how much could you really spend? To sit there. It was more like go to the store, buy some food, and then grill it right away. We had a tiny charcoal grill because there is no storage of food. So a lot of people had generators, which we did not. We couldn't afford generators at that time in our life. But it did make me aware that things could happen. And then it is nice to have a little bit of a plan.
Yes. Yeah, we did experience that in Minnesota in our house that we had before we went full-time RVing. We did have a big storm that came through, and I think it wasn't as severe as yours, 48 hours instead of 2 weeks. But, we had just made a big run to the grocery, to Costco or something. Our extra freezer was all full of meat and stuff. Thankfully, our neighbors had a generator, and they were so kind to just pop over the fence and say, hey, do you want to run an extension cord over here for your fridge and your freezer?
That's so nice. Yeah.
So that was the main concern for us at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. So some other things that people don't always think of in this is to have an extra contacts in the pipeline.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully most people buy chunks of contacts and not like one pair.
Yeah.
So you have, make sure you have contacts or glasses, really. And if you do have prescription medication that's consistent, sometimes doctors will give you a little bit extra, to have that there. Having extra infant formula or diapers is another good thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you have formula that is sitting and it expires and then you throw it away.
Yeah.
To me, it's more having that extra unopened container.
Yeah.
And then you're rotating it through in your normal pantry.
Right.
Versus like, okay, I have a bin of this stuff I use. I'm going to forget about it.
Yeah.
And now it's going to expire and that money is in the trash.
Right.
To me, with that kind of stuff, it is to keep it in the rotation and just buy one ahead. If you have the budget to do that.
Right.
Just buy one ahead. Or buy that extra pack of diapers And then when you open that, have like the 2 extra, whatever it is, just have a little bit more in the pipeline.
Yes.
And really, I don't mean to have a closet full of any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Because the chances your child will grow out of that size, and now you're giving it away in a Facebook group or something.
Yeah.
Which is great. Fine, but that's your money that you just gave away, right? Which was your time originally.
Yeah.
Extra pet food is good if you do have a pet. And one thing that in going through old documents and cleaning out stuff, I was able to kind of get our IDs, our passports, insurance policies, any of that stuff that you might need. Think about if you didn't have electricity. One thing that happened in Alabama is after the hurricane, we didn't have cell phone service. So the cell towers were so overwhelmed with people calling and checking that we couldn't get through.
Wow.
It was a long time actually before we could get like a text out to my mom to say that we were okay. Which now technology is more advanced, of course, with people being able to like say mark safe or whatever on social media. So it's different, but it's because of that problem that the cell phone towers get completely overwhelmed and you can't access the things you need to access. So having your IDs, having some cash, because without electricity, you're not necessarily having ATMs. And without electricity, the stores can't take cards. So it's cash only. All this stuff you didn't think about, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it's a good idea to have a little bit of cash, have some important documents on you. Especially for Minnesota, we have sleeping bags in addition to our like bedding blankets. And so if it got cold, which we haven't had in this house, but our last house we did have times without electricity, a couple days. And then it was good to have extra bedding. I think they do a pretty good job up here that when it's an ice storm or whatever that they come. But also we've had where our furnace went out and maybe they'll come, but it might be 3 a.m. because they're definitely going to come. You're on a list, but you're going to have your phone next to you because they're going to come in the middle of the night. But it might be pretty cold in the middle of the night. Another good one to have, no matter where you're living or what you're doing, is a fire extinguisher. Mm-hmm. So that's on the ready.gov list. But it is, I think, an important thing that goes beyond preparedness, just to have a couple places around your house and then to have your whole family know where that is. Another thing that came in handy for us when we didn't have electricity in our house is to have a laptop with, not all laptops have this anymore, but maybe an external drive to play a DVD.
Oh, yeah.
And that was really helpful when the kids were young and we didn't have power and it was cold and it just gave us something to do, like wrap up in blankets and watch a movie, which of course your laptop has to have a charge on it. But otherwise, I think we take for granted all the streaming out there, that there's so much to do. If your phone has a charge and you have enough data, because with no internet, you're not having Wi-Fi, you could stream something on your phone, of course. Yeah.
So we are full-time RVers, and so the setup that we have is dual purpose. It's one to help with us when we're boondocking and as we're traveling the country, but also some of the items that we wanted to have even before when we were still living in a house. So we have a generator now and solar panels that we can use to charge a battery bank that we have. And those are, again, we've just used them when we're boondocking, which is where you're camping without any hookups. Obviously, we're going to keep those after we buy a house because we've had times in a house where we needed a generator. So, and our generator, we bought a conversion kit to install on that, which has, so now we have the ability to run the generator on propane or gas. And we usually run it on propane because it's cheaper and easier, safer to store propane than fuel.
Sure.
We do also carry with us, a gas can with extra fuel. So in case sometimes we're traveling and there's long stretches where there's no diesel.
Yeah,
so
I bet.
We have a diesel truck. So we also have stock of extra pantry food that we keep in a bin in our garage, we call it. It's really just our truck bed. But just dry goods, pastas and rice and things like that, canned meats and canned fruit and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we do what you suggested, you know, we will have a stock, but then we kind of rotate through it and replace it. So it's never sitting there for very, you know, months or years, not getting eaten and expiring. We just rotate through it and just make sure to always have an extra stock of those items on hand, especially as we're traveling, I feel, because there, you know, a lot of unexpected things happen. Sometimes we have breakdowns. Sometimes we're stuck out in the middle of nowhere and it's really far to go to a grocery store, or there is a grocery store, but the prices are insanely high.
Yeah.
Or they just don't have hardly, you know, some places are like just a gas station and they just, maybe they don't even have milk, you know,
Yeah.
depending on where we are. So we also do a lot of hiking. So we do have some preparedness items for hiking and safety as well. We have a few emergency blankets. They're very, very thin. They're like paper thin. They're made out of Mylar, I think, like Mylar balloons. And we have some emergency tents that you can put up like over you on the ground to help you stay warm. We definitely always have batteries on hand with flashlights, and we definitely carry first aid stuff with us for when we're out hiking for various different scenarios that could come up.
Yeah, because when you're way out there, it's probably not as easy as calling 911. You know, it's more involving
Right.
park ranger,
Yes.
time.
And, you know, we travel and see a lot of national parks. Most of the national parks don't have cell signal inside the park.
Yes, we
So-
did experience that on some of our trips. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, even if you're wanting a map to know where you're going, you have to download it before you go.
Yeah.
Save it, take a picture of it, whatever. And I also have an external battery pack that I bring in case I need to charge my phone.
Yep.
If we are using it for navigation or emergencies. So, yeah.
Yeah, when I was camping up in the Boundary Waters, I did a week of it, and we went up to Canada. A previous trip of people that had went, one of the kids cut his leg open, and then getting back was quite an ordeal.
Oh, man.
And no cell phone service unless you came across someone with a satellite phone. I don't know what it's like now, but and then they talked about how you can find other people and put your canoes in like an X shape, like 4 people, and then maybe if a helicopter comes over. But it's not as easy as the EMTs being right around the corner.
Right.
So having some extra stuff, depending on how far you're either vacationing or full-time living, how far away. I think from living in kind of a metropolitan area and having lots of larger cities around us too, it was different when I went out west and was surprised at how far we'd be driving and I'd see a house and I'd be like, where do they get their groceries? And just like look groceries near me, and it's so far. And so it is something to think about.
Yep.
Yeah, we also have the cell phone, you know, the battery, like the extra battery that you can charge and plug your phone into. And that was helpful when we were staying at places that didn't have electricity, just to keep your phone going because we were using it for like GPS. Yeah. Another thing that I'm sure you guys carry around are some tools, like the biggest one being we keep something to turn off the main water of our home. So if something burst, we could, at this house, it's like newer, and so it has just the thing you can turn. But at the other house, it was very old, and so you had to have a pliers to turn it. Instead of, you have water pouring out of a ceiling, and you're running around, rifling through toolboxes to find something to turn it off. I think that's another good idea, and I'm sure you guys have tools, being that you're traveling a lot.
Yep. Yeah. I don't know a lot about him. That's kind of my husband's realm. But I do know that he's got a lot of the tools that we would need if there was a breakdown. If there was something we could do about it. Some breakdowns you can't. A mechanic has to. Fixing things around the RV or our tow vehicle as well. So, but yeah, he's very good at keeping them. Well, we have to. I mean, that's kind of the thing about RV life. We have to stay organized.
Yep.
Because we move a lot. And so we have to be able to move quickly. So our tools are, you know, he keeps them very organized. And so, and I'm using tools now too to help with the setup and breakdown, because he doesn't do it all by himself. The kids help too. So we have certain places we know this tool always goes here. This tool always goes here. So yeah, that's been really helpful, just so we always know. And that's new for me because I never knew where anything was in the garage before when we were in our house. So it's kind of nice to kind of have some idea at least of where to find most of the things that come up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A friend of ours, he went on a trip with his 4 kids and his wife I think they went out to the Grand Canyon, but they camped in tents and they only stayed, I think, in state forests. So definitely know, you're using the bathroom at the visitor center and then finding your spot. And I'm like, how did you do that he had a small SUV. And he said he had to have a diagram. Everything had to go exactly back where it came out of. And that was it. Like, I'm impressed. I would say they're very minimalist. But just I go camping and it doesn't have electricity usually with a tent site. You rarely find that anymore. But there's a flushable toilet you can walk to, or not always. Sometimes up north it's not a flushable toilet, but it's still a toilet you can walk to versus like a state forest, which it's my understanding, you're kind of just going wherever to put your tent. You're not going to have the fire pit and the picnic table ready for you. You're just going in there. And so, but yeah, being very organized is probably a huge time saver and also space saver. Right. Everything has a place. Yeah.
Right. Well, and with your stock of supplies for any preparedness situation, having an inventory. Yeah. A list that you keep updated so you're not wondering, oh, I know we have this, but where is it? Or, oh, do we have, oh no, we need to replenish this supply or whatever.
I heard a tip that can be helpful with, especially if you have food in a separate area, to write the expiration dates in a big permanent marker on the top. So you don't have to turn everything to look for the date. Yeah. You can kind of see when you need to rotate through it in a quicker way. Yeah. Yeah. And then also an inventory list with their expiration dates, which is a little bit more intensive because when you update it, you have to go back and rewrite it or find the document, update it, print it again. So a quicker way would just be to write on it but then you don't see it in the front of the bin necessarily. And of course with food, we want to remember to throw in a can opener, a hand one, I have unfortunately went camping with no can opener and brought something that needed a can opener. Yeah. So made that mistake myself.
Although some of those, canned meat and stuff sometimes has its own little pull tab. So
yeah, and soups now. I think a lot of cans are starting to have that.
But fruit doesn't always. Some of them do, but.
Right. And what was I looking at the other day? Canned salmon. Oh. And that did not, which I was surprised about.
That's funny.
Because I'm pretty sure tuna does a lot of times, but I don't know. I'm not all up on the canned fishes, I guess. I should have studied more for this exam. But so we talked about a few things that you can do with minimalism and preparedness. Of course, that doesn't exhaust the list. Everybody has their own needs for their own family. I do think it is a good idea to sit down and kind of think about what you would do if you didn't have electricity or water for a week and make a plan. If you would like more information on this topic, you can visit ready.gov and they have some great printable lists that you can customize for your own needs for your family. We are excited to introduce the 2024 Minimalist Mom Planner. I don't know about you, but I love a good planner. It keeps me organized, on track, and motivated. We've designed this planner to keep you on top of your game and help you achieve your New Year's resolutions. Included in the planner are monthly and daily planner pages, our monthly declutter challenge for the entire year, budget, spending, and buy nothing challenge trackers, weekly cleaning lists, meal plan, and even a little space for gratitude. Because let's face it, even the smallest victory deserves a celebration. You can download it now at 123minimize.com and make 2024 your most organized and stress-free year yet.
And that's a wrap for today's episode about minimalism and preparedness. We hope you enjoyed delving into this topic with us and found a few tips that might help you on your journey. We want to extend a heartfelt thank you to our amazing listeners for tuning in. Your support and curiosity are what keeps us going. For more tools and resources to help you on your journey toward a simpler life, visit our website, www.123minimize.com. If you found today's episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an opportunity to explore new ideas and perspectives. And if you're inclined, Leave us a review, which helps to spread the word to others who might enjoy the journey too. As always, feel free to connect with us on Facebook or Instagram to share your thoughts, suggestions, or just to say hi. Until next time, stay motivated. Take care.